Welcome to the Spectrum Lounge podcast, where we discuss creatives of color disrupting the game in TV, film, and pop culture. I am your host, Rebecca Theodore-Vachon, and on this episode, I am joined by screenwriter Courttia Newland of the Amazon series Small Axe, directed by Steve McQueen, which premieres November 20th in the U.S. Take a listen. Welcome, Courttia Newland, to the Spectrum Lounge. I'm so happy you're here.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this.
Great. Yeah, Small Axe is a project that I know that they announced it, I want to say like 2-3 years ago. And so it's been on my radar because I'm a huge fan of Steve McQueen. And just, hearing the idea of having this series that is focused on the Black West Indian community in the UK. And so it spans 3 decades, correct? Because the 60s, 70s, and 80s,
That's right.
Yeah. So you co-wrote 2 of the episodes, Red, White, and Blue, which stars John Boyega and Steve Toussaint. And then you also co-wrote Lovers Rock, which was actually selected by the Cannes Film Festival. And I believe Small Axe was also premiered at the New York Film Festival. So what's it been like to see the reaction of people, just the reviews and just the conversations about these shows?
Yeah, it's been beyond my wildest dreams. I knew in the writer's room that it was going to be something special. Like I was coming out every day after we finished discussing the story and saying, this is going to be huge, this is going to be really big. So, it was just very, very difficult to comprehend, like the enormity of it, and like the reality of the fact that people were really, really liking it. And then all the reviews came in, and that really, I remember the first night the reviews came in, I think it was for Lovers Rock. And I read a few of them, and then I just couldn't take it anymore. And I just went. It was like so good, and like especially in the UK, people like Peter Bradshaw, giving it 5 stars just blew me away. I know Peter Bradshaw's reviews, so it was just and the responses from people that I was seeing, when they were talking about it, it was just really like amazing and stuff. And then when Mangrove came out, same thing, and Red, White, and Blue, same thing, and just like. I just couldn't believe it, So, yeah, I just really, really bowled over. I'm still a little bit shocked by it all.
Yes.
I think Steve is as well. I think he's just like...
Is he?
Yeah, I think he really... Yeah, he really, obviously it's really personal and close to him and stuff. And I remember after we'd seen the films in the screening, we spoke to him and he was just a bit like, this is a bit mad, isn't it? Yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, I think, because I think this project was in the works from like 2015, correct? Or like 2016. So this has been like 5 years in the making. And
it's been on it 5 years, but it's been longer than that.
Yeah. And the thing that just struck me is that for a project that, that was 5 years in the making, and yet when it came out, it still feels amazingly, but also disappointingly, it's so timely. Like it is so relevant right now, especially with everything that's going on right now with, the Black Lives Matter protests, not only here, but in the UK and just pretty much the worldwide. So I wanted to start with Red, White, and Blue because that is actually based on the true life story of Leroy Logan, who was a Black British officer, and he was the first chair of the National Black Police Association and basically used his career to, address police brutality and the unfair treatment of people of color. Can you tell us how you got in contact, how you got involved with this project, and what was your first meeting with Steve McQueen like?
I got in contact with this project because I was working on I'm a playwright as well. I was working on another project in a city called Sheffield in the north of England, and I just got a call one day saying, would you like to be involved in the Steve McQueen project, as it was called at that point in time? And of course, I was like, hell yes, I would. I knew all about the project. I'd been following it for a number of years before I got that call, and I always wanted to do it because I'm from West London. I'm born and raised from West London, and I'm a novelist as well, and all of my novels are set in West London about the Black British community. So I was like, this is a project that I am personally perfect for. But yeah, I just like, I know it, I was just watching it happen basically from the sidelines, and I was a bit like, oh well, and I'd actually let it go by that point. I'd been like, okay, it's gonna happen.
Mhm.
It's gonna happen without me. And I'm just gonna have to deal with it, you know. And then I got the call, and yeah, so I had a meeting with the producers, and I showed them some of my work, and they liked my work, and they said they knew of me and stuff. And they said, okay, so the next thing is you're gonna have to meet Steve. And that took a little while because Steve being as busy as he is.
Mhm.
And then yeah, I met him in a hotel in the West End, and we had a meeting which I actually thought went terribly. I thought it went really badly, and I thought I'd messed it up. And I told
Right.
myself I'd messed it up when I left the meeting. You know, what I mean, I was really like, "You messed it up." I didn't do that. But apparently, I did okay. You know,
Right.
and so I was told afterwards, no, actually, he really thought you were great. And I was like, oh, really? Okay. And, and so then I got invited to be in the writer's room, and we did 6 weeks in a writer's room, and
Mhm.
basically, beat out, worked out the storyline for all of the episodes for Small Axe.
Right. So did you actually meet in your research for writing Red, White, and Blue, did you actually meet Leroy Rogan, the
Sorry,
Logan?
yeah, you asked me that. Yes, I did. So in that, as part of that 5 6 weeks writers' room, Leroy Logan came in and talked to us about his experiences. So
Mm,
we met people who've been involved in the mangrove. We met various people who would help us with different episodes and stuff. And Leroy came in to talk about his. And I remember, it was an afternoon, and he spoke for quite a long time about everything, and we were all just like, "What?" Because
mhm.
I'd never heard that story before. And to be honest with you, none of us could work out what the hell happened and why he'd done that. Like, we were just like,
Right.
don't do that. And like it says in the script, it's not America. People don't, especially not in the 80s in London, people did not, if you were black, you don't join the police force. There were very few black policemen and women. There's a few more now, but back then, like, you hardly if ever saw a black policeman or woman. So yeah, I didn't understand it. I was just like, well, I don't get this. I don't, And so then afterwards, we talked a little bit more. Then Steve said that would be my episode, and I was just like, what? Because don't get me wrong, I loved the story. I thought it was such a
Right.
cool story, but I was just like, that's huge. Like, how? Like, well, I was just really intimidated, basically. And then we met Leroy one more time during that writers' room, and we sat and spoke to him, and we were really trying to work out what is it that made you want to do this. And halfway through that meeting, it clicked. I felt like I knew why he did it,
Mm.
and then I was okay. I was okay. Steve was like, well, "How do you feel about it?" and stuff after that meeting. I was like, it's cool. I think I got this. Yeah, I think I get it. Yeah,
Right.
and that was it. Yeah, yeah, I was ready.
Yeah. I felt like you too, like when I first watched the episode,
Hmm.
and I mean, there's no spoilers here because it really happened. The scene where we see Leroy's father being brutalized by the police, and then he decides to join. I admit, like you, when I watched it, I was like, I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
Are they going to be able to pull this off? Because I don't understand why he would do that. But I
yeah,
think what was so great about the writing of the episode is that, at least to me, when I was watching it, it was really Leroy and Kenneth just coming at it from two different angles, right? I think they both had the anger and they both understood the injustice, that the police were enacting. But I feel like they were just going about it in different ways.
yeah,
His
yeah,
Leroy's solution was like, I'm going to go, from the inside and change it from the inside out. And Kenneth was more like, I want my day in court.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I want to take them down, burn it all down. You know what I mean? So I feel like that's what I got in that meeting
Hmm.
with Leroy, was that I got that he believed it. That's what the penny dropped for me, was that he really believed that he could make a change. And even at that point in time when we were speaking to him, like 20, 30 years later, he still believed it, not only that he could make a change, but that things needed to change. And he wasn't going to stop until it did. You know what I mean? And
Right.
kind of like zeal, whether it's misplaced or not, is really admirable. And
Hmm.
I saw a man who just hadn't been crushed by any of these experiences. He refused to let it crush him. He refused to be defeated, and like I said a few other times as well, he turned back to the community. He drew like sustenance from the community. When think times were hard, and he never stopped looking in that direction. In the first place, he did it for the community, and now at this stage and stuff, he still believes that he's got to change things for the community, and so it was a huge change for me. It was a huge realization for me. And once I knew why the character was behaving in that way. It just fell into place,
Right.
because of the.
Yeah. Yeah, the opening scene where you see Leroy as a young child and being approached and being searched by the police. And I think the reason why I'm so excited for people to watch this episode too is, there's just been this discussion, right? Like, sometimes there's this misunderstanding that maybe, Black British people don't experience police brutality or racism the same
Yeah,
way that
yeah,
Black
yeah.
Americans do, or it's not as bad. And I just feel like this episode pretty much shuts down every conversation or any argument that somebody may have, because that could have easily could happen in a corner in Chicago or New York or Washington D.C. Just a young Black boy
Mm,
minding his business. We see this all the time. So I'm just it was just I was just so upset watching that episode. Like, oh my God,
yeah,
that seeing his father being brutalized, the scene where he with the locker where they write the N word on it.
yeah.
Did that really happen? Is
All of
because I
that
was
really
like,
happened. All of it really happened. And
wow.
Here's the thing. Not only did all of that really happen, that was absolutely normal. Like where I used to live,
Mm-hmm.
I used to walk down. I live by, in Mangrove. You see the Westway, and it's being
Yes.
built, the huge motorway. I lived by a place called White City, and right next to the Westway, you could literally look out of my house window, and there's the Westway. It's a little further down, a few miles down from Ladbroke Road. And when you walked past the pillars that held up the Westway, you would see things like, and I'm going to use some triggering racial
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
slurs. So they'd say "wogs out," and "wog" was, basically the N word, but in Britain,
Wow.
basically, and it would be "wogs out," and it would be NF, which was National Front, which was the far right group, and you see it written up, and you'd walk past this when I went to the shops like every day, and it was everywhere. So at this point in time in Britain, it was quite normal what was happening to Leroy, and you see the way that they're talking to him, and the things that they're saying to him is not like, oh, we need to be guarded about this. It was openly said. You would hear it on television. You would turn on the television, and characters on the television would be saying it.
Mm-hmm.
So it was everywhere, everywhere. And so I found it really strange when I've gone to, I've come to the US and stuff, and I've been having discussions with people, and they'd say to me, "Oh, you guys didn't have a civil rights movement," was said to me one time, and like all this stuff.
What?
Yeah, I get really upset because I'd be like, but not like you need to like just pick up a book or like just do some research. You know what I mean? Because
Mm-hmm.
it's all there really. There's like like even Malcolm X. He came to the UK because of what was going on in the UK. So yeah, and in some ways I don't really I get where it's coming from because there's been a lot of misinformation and
Mm-hmm.
people haven't been telling these stories. We haven't been given the power to tell these stories in the UK and also in the US. Like if you see anything about the UK, it's been like Downton Abbey and EastEnders,
Yes.
and stuff like that. So
Mm-hmm.
of course people don't understand, like what the real life stories are. But that what happened to Leroy Logan and all of those things that we're talking about in Small Acts was just like pervasive. It was universal. Everyone went through it.
Right. No, I love what you said about this idea of like the Black British people didn't have a civil war. Because I remember a few years ago, I mean, this isn't to dunk on anybody, but there was a series a few years ago from Showtime that was called Gorilla that was supposed to tackle that topic. But, people were just sort of like, I'm not sure if we're getting the whole story here, because
Yeah,
one
yeah.
of the yeah, one of the major complaints was that there was an absolute absence of Black women in the telling of the story, which I told people Small Axe is definitely not that. I'm like, this is not Gorilla,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I
because
mean,
it's coming from you guys.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna say anything about Gorilla, but I just feel like that. Yeah, it's obvious, really. Any kind of like social justice movement and civil rights movement that pertains to our people is driven by black women. We know this.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So you can't leave that out. That just can't. It's got to be a fundamental part of any story that you're telling.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I'm just so glad that that's the story that we chose to tell. And we got the opportunity to do that big, and it's been received so well. It's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I the ending to Red, White, and Blue, it was just the two of them sitting at that table.
Yeah.
Um, because it felt like Leroy's character, like he really didn't understand like why his father was so upset and why he wanted his day in court. And there's this specific scene after he confronts the cops in the pool room.
Hmm.
And then there's the shot goes from him to his father in the bathroom when he found out he wasn't going to get his day in court, and it was like now he gets it. I feel like it was a full circle moment for Leroy where he finally understood where his father was coming from.
Yeah,
um yeah.
it's quite interesting in the UK because usually that disconnect, that generational disconnect, goes the other way.
Hmm.
So a lot of the times you would hear about the kids being brutalized by the police and then going back and telling their parents, and the parents, the Windrush generation parents, saying, "You must have done something wrong. You must have done something to
Mm.
break the law for this to happen to you." The police wouldn't do that. You know what I mean? I just don't believe it. And there was a kind of generational disconnect. So that's what another one of those things I found really interesting about Leroy's story is that it just didn't happen that way. It happened in reverse. But also
Mhm.
it was about the way that people who were born in Britain have a sense of belonging and
Mhm.
centralization that the previous generation didn't have. They came from somewhere else. They were trying to be themselves or to fit into society, and it was a quite uncomfortable fit. But I think the next generation actually took it for granted that certain rights and privileges were meant to be theirs. What I
Mhm.
mean? And I think that's what Leroy felt. And in some ways, he's totally right. I mean, like, I agree with him in a sense. Yeah, you should have those rights and privileges. Obviously, you don't. And that's where the disconnect was. But he believed that he should, and he was willing to fight for that. And I find that really inspirational, in some ways.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I find that
Yeah.
really interesting.
Um yes. I did want to switch to Lovers Rock because I love all of them. They're like five separate children that I love that I love equally. But
Yeah,
there's with Lovers Rock, it was so specific because it takes place in one night at a house party.
hmm yeah.
And you've got all these different characters. So what was your approach to writing this episode? Because I mean there's no special effects, there's no, this is very much a character driven
Yeah,
story.
yeah.
What was the approach to writing the script for Lovers Rock?
I think in my mind, I was just so overjoyed at being given the chance to write this because I was saying to myself, and I don't think I've not even told Steve, I might have said it in another interview, but I never said to Steve, but I was like, I really have the opportunity to do an art house movie directed by
Mm.
Steve McQueen about Black British culture. Like when does that happen? Yeah, so I have to really go in, you know what I mean? Like I have to do it
Yeah.
full force the way it was meant to be, as authentic as possible, and just immerse myself in it. And I was overjoyed. I mean, I'm glad it comes across that people are feeling this real sense of joy in the film because I was overjoyed to be doing it. I was so
Hmm.
happy. I was playing music. My next door neighbor at the time, she's moved out now, was like an elderly Jamaican woman, Mrs.
Hmm.
Blair, which is why Dennis Bovel's character is called Mr. Blair. And she would have these huge house parties, like literally, like last summer, and
Yeah.
people joined. And she would have it, and they would go on till 3, 4 in the morning in her back garden, full sound system, and everything. And she'd be playing some of these records and stuff. You know what I mean? And I'd be writing in my room, like
Hmm.
in the room, writing Lovers Rock. So it was
Right.
just that immersion into culture. I think that's what I did slightly differently with this piece. It was kind of like
Mm.
I don't want to use the word an observation piece because I know it comes
Yeah.
across slightly that way with the camera and stuff, but it's an
Mm,
observation piece from the inside rather than being detached and from the outside, you know?
mm,
It's being in the center of the party with these people and observing, you know, all the
yeah.
little details and nuances and stuff. And but I feel like I didn't
Mm,
try to make it different from Red, White, and Blue. I just knew that it had its own voice. And Red, White,
yeah.
and Blue's voice was very, very specific. It was very much about this particular thing and saying this particular thing. And Lovers Rock
Mhm.
was saying the polar opposite, basically. You know, it was completely the opposite. And it's really
Yeah.
great to have a chance to do that, to tell two completely polar opposite stories about the same community, that essentially tackling the same thing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, what you said about the like it was so specific. Like I grew up in a West Indian neighborhood in
Hmm.
Brooklyn, and it
Hmm.
was like setting up the speakers and the cooking, and I was just like, wow. Like it felt accurate. It was
Yeah,
100% accurate. And
yeah,
like even down to I was watching my friend. I was like, this is how I know that a black West Indian person made. I was like, there's a scene, I think there's a shot of the wall where you see like it's actually like it's not sweating, but you kind of see
where it's different.
perspiration.
Yeah,
And I was like, that's how you know you're at a good house party.
yeah.
If the walls are sweating, you're doing it right.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. So, I mean, all of those things, I think, me and Steve were in back and forth discussion about throughout, well,
Hmm.
from the writers' room, but also throughout, and also Alex as well, throughout the Rachel, throughout the writing of this. So things like like people would bring different things to the table, like so
Hmm.
I would remember. Or I would ask my mom about Mackesons, you know what I mean, the drink and stuff, and she'd be like, "Okay, you need to put that in." So I'll put that in, and then Alex Wheatle would remember the man at the door, you know what I mean, like the big dude from the door who just got out of jail, you know what I mean,
Hmm.
and kung fu fighting, you know what I mean? And then Steve would say, okay, but we got to have the sweat and stuff, and we got to have this and that, and the touching of the arms and stuff like that. And between
Yes.
the three of us, we wove this tapestry of what the night would be like, Um,
Hmm.
I remember it very well because I was like, I was, I don't know, man, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, when these parties were going on, And my dad, some would say irresponsibly, but thank God he did it. He used to take me to these parties, even I was really, well, not all the time. And my mum wasn't very happy about it, but at certain times and stuff, he would just say, come, and there'd be a load of kids. And you were supposed to stay in the bedroom with the kids. Steve was talking about this the other day with all the coats piled up on the bed. That's where you were meant to be. But you would sneak out and you would come down and you would just watch what was going on and stuff. Or you would, can I have some food? You know what I mean? And someone would go and get you a plate. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. It really was like it really did feel so lived in. And one of the things that I did appreciate about that episode too, and I'm glad that you pinpointed it and talked about it, is one of the characters who attempts to sexually assault
Yeah.
the birthday girl, the guest of honor. And I feel like that is very much an honesty in our community where the party was very much a communion. A lot of women are there, right? A lot of these parties are populated by women, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're safe all the time, that even toxic masculinity has a way of entering these spaces. And even as women, we have to be careful, or I shouldn't say be careful, but like these are the things that we have to deal with. The guy who
Mhm.
is a little too aggressive, right? When he's asking you to dance, where he's like the part where she tried to go into the bathroom and he tried going in with her.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that happened to me. That has
Yeah,
actually
yeah,
happened
yeah,
to me.
yeah, I've seen it, and
Yeah.
there's a spillover. Like most people can conduct themselves with a level of okay, this is where my moral understanding lies, and there's always going to be someone who goes a little bit over the edge in every party. You know what I mean?
Mm,
I've just been watching Grand Army. You know what I mean? And like just seeing like how I don't know if you've seen that series, but that how
mm,
there's spillover in that. It's a really thin line and stuff. But that came from my aunt's story. I was asking my auntie about how the dances were because I knew as much as I remembered and as broad as my memories were and
mhm.
Steve and Alex's, we were all men. You know what I mean? So
Mm.
I was telling a woman's story. And I'm very careful when I tell a woman's story. You know what I mean? I want to
Right.
make sure that I don't stray into my own my own accidental or habitual patriarchy. So
Mm-hmm.
I had to talk to my mom, and I couldn't ask my mum those things. You know what I mean? It was a bit too raw and close. So I spoke to my auntie, and I wasn't probing or looking for it. You know, my auntie just
Yeah.
like said, she started talking about stuff, and she said, she said something like, and sometimes some guys wouldn't say no. That's
Mm.
what he said to me, you know what I mean? And I was like, whoa, because I hadn't, you know what I mean? I hadn't really, of course, you know what I mean? It makes sense, but I hadn't thought about it. And so, yeah,
Right.
that's where that strand came from. I was like, I got to put that in. There's no way I can really honor, their experiences if I don't put this happening to someone, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting that the two women in that scene, like in the beginning, she was kind of
Yeah.
hating on her, like, what is she
Yeah.
doing
Yeah.
here?
Yeah.
And then it comes out that she's the one who actually, helps her,
Yeah.
saves her from being sexually assaulted. So,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I think that's true too, as far as like, as women, I think, yes, we have a sisterhood, but sometimes we can be catty and
Yeah.
sometimes we can be competitive. I felt
Yeah.
that was real.
Yeah, that's really. I got pulled up one time because I wrote a story about some women, like young women and stuff, and and other women said to me, those characters in that story were too friendly to her. You know what I mean?
Mm.
In reality, they wouldn't have been as friendly. You know what I mean? So I was like, okay, well, and that again came out in the script and stuff. But it serves as a nice arc for her as well, for Cynthia. You know, she starts off in
Yes.
one, and she ends up, she's had a journey. Which is great.
Mhm. Yeah. Talk to me about the scene. The one scene that I found really fascinating was the scene. I think it's like towards the end where all the men get together, and it
Hmm.
almost looks like this tribal
Hmm.
dance because
Hmm.
you have that guy, the one who tried to sexually
Yeah,
assault her, and
Annie.
then you
Yeah,
had the
yeah,
other, her cousin who came in, and he just seemed
yeah, yeah,
really agitated. And I don't know if it was me, but it kind of felt like the DJ and the other men, the
hmm,
less toxic men, were trying to keep it under control. Like they
yeah.
were like, okay, let's channel the energy here
Yeah, yeah,
on the
totally,
dance floor.
totally. I mean, we spoke about this a lot about the dance being an oasis,
Mm-hmm.
and for the women, for Black people as a whole, but particularly for the men. And all week you have to be out there. You have to be dealing with Leroy Logan star racism. You know what I mean? You'll be hearing this, that, and the other about you. Some people are getting attacked. Some people are being brutalized by the police. And the dance was a way to not only be yourselves, to also let out that outrage and let out that energy and that anger in some ways, in a way that is not going to damage yourself. And every night I would, at these dances and stuff, I would wait for the dub part of the night. You know what I mean? When
Mm,
man just let loose, because it always happens. It always was like, first you play the soul and stuff like that, and then you play the lovers, and then you play the hard reggae and stuff, and then you play the dub. You know what I mean? And the dub would be, after the midnight hour. You know what I mean? In the early hours of the morning and stuff. And yeah, yeah,
mhm.
yeah, it'd be a very masculine place. There would be women there, but it'd be a very masculine place, and the man would just let loose. The men would just let loose. And
Yeah.
yeah, I really wanted to capture that. I knew that had to be the focal point of the night, the climactic part of the night. And I'd see it in August Wilson. Also, I know it sounds kind of random and weird, but August Wilson in plays like Joe Turner's Come and Gone. You know what I mean? There's a
Mhm.
moment where people connect and reconnect with their Africanness. You know what I
Yes.
mean? And I've always wanted to do that. Uh, in Fella, when Fella, I don't know if you've seen it on Broadway, the Fella
Yes.
musical, when he
Mm.
climbs the ladder to his mum's spirit, you know what I mean? There's a moment of pure Africanness. And
Mm.
what that means to me, that's them saying, okay, we are going to wholly be ourselves in this modern place. And also progress, and also have a progression, like we're going to do it in this modern, really dub electronic way, but
Mm.
it's another aspect of our Africanness.
Yeah. And and that's the thing too, is like the music. Well, all the episodes, the music in all of the episodes are amazing. But specifically with Lovers Rock, it was like the music, they were playing disco, they were playing Kung Fu Fight. And it was just kind of seeing like this bridge of the African diaspora. Like
Mhm.
we're listening, they're listening to American music, right? And I remember when I was here in the 80s, you had like what we call the Black British invasion with like Soul to Soul, and you know what I mean? And it's like we've always been connected.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really hope that this film, and all the films, but particularly Lovers Rock, really shows that connection. It was happening even then. And people talk a lot about, oh, the connection was only one way, but I don't really believe that. I think, yeah, in the whole, yes, but I think a lot more was going on, and it was a lot more complicated than people gave it credit for. You know what I mean? It wasn't as straight as that. It wasn't as black and white as that. So. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Courttia Newland, for speaking with me. I'm really excited. Small Axe will premiere on Amazon Prime. In the US, it will be premiering next Friday, November 20th. I can't wait for everybody to watch it so everybody can talk about it. I can't talk to anybody about it. I only know two people who've seen
No,
it, but
no.
I'm really excited about it.
Thank you so much, man. I really enjoyed this.
Great. Thank you so much and have a great day.
You too. Take care. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.